Hi everyone, we're going to finish up with question 9, and this one is really long. So let's start reading it. So it says that in 5 years Kent Duncan will retire. He's exploring the possibility of opening a self-service car wash. The car wash could be managed in the free time he has available from his regular occupation and would be closed easily when he retires. After a careful study, Mr. Duncan has determined the following. We have several facts here that I don't necessarily want to read, but we'll read them as we go. And it says that Mr. Duncan will not open the car wash unless it provides at least a 10% return. So we have a couple assumptions. So we want to assume that the car wash will be open 52 weeks a year, and then we want to compute the annual net cash receipts from its operation. So to do this, we want to determine the profit that's happening from this. So the first thing we want to determine or do is we want to determine the average weekly use of the auto wash. So the auto wash and then the vacuum. And these are two facts that we're going to read really quickly. So we figured out, or we are given this information, so gross receipts from the wash would be about $13.50 per week. So that's something we want to know. And then we know that each customer will pay $2 for a wash and $1 for access to a vacuum cleaner. But there's another thing we see here. It says 60% of the customers using the wash would also use the vacuum. So there's a couple things we want to know here. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to divide the $1,300, the $13.50, and we're going to divide that by $2, because that will give us about how many car washes we're getting, or we're performing for people. So that's about 675. And then from there, we know that that's 675 car washes. Then from there, it told us in this problem that 60% of the customers using the wash would also use the vacuum. So that means I want to multiply 675 times 60%. And that gets me 405 uses, 405 vacuums, or vacuum sessions. I don't know what to call those. We'll call them that. Okay. So, to determine the expected annual net cash receipts, this is weekly. This information is all weekly, so average weekly. So now we need to multiply it, right? So, the total expected would be $1,350, so $1,350. So that's the auto wash. That's about what we expect per week, times 52, because it told us in this problem as well that it would be open 52 weeks a year. So we'd multiply that, but then we would also add it to 405 uses times $1, because that's what it told us in this problem as well, right there. $1 access to a vacuum cleaner times $1 times 52. So this is kind of this is actually a multiple step problem. So this gives us 91,260. And that number is our total cash receipts. So total cash receipts is 91,260. So when we operate a business, do we only have cash receipts? No, we do not. We also have expenses. So a lot of that information in this problem is actually a lot of our disbursements that we're going to have to deal with. So it says a building in which the car wash would be installed is under a 5-year lease at the cost of $1,700 per month. So we have rent. So we're just gonna go down the line here. So rent is going to be 1,700 times 12, and that gets me 20,400. And remember, that's a disbursement. I'm going to put disbursement right here. And then the next thing, and this is laid out a lot better in my solution. I'm sorry, it's probably not very, very beautiful right now. The next thing is it talks about the purchase and installation cost of equipment would total $200,000. In 5 years, the equipment could be sold for about 10% of its original cost. And I'm not really worried about that right now, so we're going to go down to the next fact. It says an investment of an additional $2,000 would be required to cover working capital cost needs after 5 years. So that's also another thing I'm not worried about right now. The only variable costs associated with operating would be 2 cents per wash for water and 10 cents per use of the vacuum for electricity. So if we multiply, because we know we're going to have about 675 car washes a week, we would multiply 675 times 0.2 cents times 52. And that gets me a negative 7,020. Then we also have electricity as mentioned. So electricity, we would multiply that, we would do 405 times 0.1 times 52. And that gets me, let's see, 2,106. Okay, so we've gotten a few. We have a few more things that we need to worry about. So the next one would be, let's see. So in addition to rent, monthly costs of operation would be cleaning, insurance, and maintenance. So we need to multiply all of those by 12, by 12, because those are our monthly costs. Let's see. So we would do, so for cleaning, that would be $450 times 12. And that gives me $5,400. And then our next one is insurance. And that's $75 times 12. And that gets me $900. And then finally we have maintenance. And that gives me 500 times 12, which is 6,000. So these are all disbursements. I put them negative. On the solution, I feel like it's a little bit clearer. So if you don't like my handwriting here, feel free to go look at that. So if we take out all of these and determine, so first off, our total cash disbursements. We'll actually move this guy out here, 91,260. So our total cash disbursements are 41,826. So if I take that number from this number, I get 49,434, and that is my annual net cash receipts. So that looked really daunting, right? It looked really scary, that word problem, at least I thought it did, but it really isn't that bad. So at the first step, just to walk through it one more time, we just determined how many car washes we had so that we could determine how many vacuum sessions we had. And then we determined our cash receipts by multiplying the numbers that we were given times 52 weeks in the year. And that gives us our total cash receipts. And then we determined our total cash disbursements. Respectively, we kind of walked through that together, and that gave us our annual net cash receipts of this number. So now we have another part to this problem, kind of a nice problem. It kind of mixes up a couple things and gives us a lot to do. So it says, what is the net present value of the investment in the car wash? Would you advise Mr. Duncan to open the car wash? Round all dollar figures to the nearest whole dollar. So that was part one. This is part two. So now we want to determine, we want to make one of these kind of PV tables that we've been using. So in order for him to do this, he's going to have to do quite a few things. So first off, we're going to have to purchase equipment for $200,000, right? So $200,000, he's going to have to purchase the equipment. So I'm going to put purchase of equip, and that's going to be $200,000. And I really want to stress to you guys that if we're spending money, we need to make sure that it's negative in situations like this, because that just kind of helps us make sure that when we add everything up together that we're getting an accurate total. So the next thing is our working capital. So working capital is something that you guys maybe haven't heard of quite yet. Cover working capital. So this is just money that we need to invest in order for us to actually be able to get something going. So it's kind of money that we spend that's tied up in the business to buy that first initial little bit of stuff. So that's that one. And then we have annual net cash flows, which we calculated. So these problems all work together. So annual net cash flow is 49,434. And then we have some other things. So one thing that it says here, after this working capital, is it says that after 5 years, it's released. So that released was actually in one of your homework problems. And released means that we actually free it up from this activity and we can invest it somewhere else. So we get that money back, essentially. So I'm going to put working capital released. So if we're getting the money back, it would be positive, right? So hopefully that doesn't mix you guys up, that we have both a negative and a positive here. Then we have one more thing. It says that we could purchase the equipment, and in 5 years, the equipment could be sold for 10% of its original cost. So our salvage value would be 200,000 times 10%, right? And that gives us 20,000. And notice I'm not putting negatives around it because we're getting that money back, right? Okay, I'm gonna move this over a little bit just so I have a little bit of room to put some years. Okay, so now let's run through and put all the years down. So what am I doing now? I'm investing in the equipment and I'm investing in my business. So these are both now, right? Okay, so then the annual net cash flow is actually occurring over the next 5 years. It's happening every year. That's what we're predicting. So that would be years 1 to 5. Then the working capital and the salvage value, those things are going to happen in year 5, right? That's when they told us that they would be released and when we would get our money back, or we could sell the equipment to potentially get some money back. So now we would go through and determine our PV factors, and remember that you're going to get a table, so don't worry about memorizing these or anything. So whenever we see the word now, super easy, we just put number 1 because it's right now. There's nothing we don't have to present value that money to now because it's already in the present value. So then annual net cash flow, and I think this trips people up because we want to pick, first off, we want to make sure we're using the last year in the period. So we want to use year 5. Then we want to go to the annuity table. So the annuity table you can recognize because it says it kind of at the top, but also the numbers are going to be a little bit bigger. So this factor that I got was 3.791. Okay, then we would do the same thing. Oh, and just to remind you that we're using the 10% rate of return. Sorry about that. So that's how I'm picking out these present value factors. And then the last two are going to be 0.621. because that's in year 5, and we would trace through that table and find it. So now what we do is we multiply across, right? So I'm just going to multiply across really quickly. Sorry, this video is getting really long. So these are the numbers I got. I just multiplied them in my calculator. And now I'm just copying them off my sheet of paper that's right next to me to help me out. Okay, so I have all these numbers now. So now what I want to do is add them all up, right? Because I want to determine the net present value of my investment. And that gives me a negative $934. Okay, so what do you guys think? Do you think we should invest in this? And the answer would actually be no. We shouldn't invest in this because the negative net present value indicates that the rate of return on this investment is slightly less than the 10% required rate of return. So if we're not returning anything positive in this situation, we wouldn't want to invest because that would actually, I mean, it looks like he's not returning as he's not returning as well as he'd like to. So we would not want to invest. All right, so that's the last problem. I hope that was helpful, and sorry this video was so long.